Okay, now let's talk a little bit about price elasticity and revenue. Of course, revenue, pretty important to firms and in businesses. In fact, revenue minus cost equals profit is sort of the fundamental equation to all businesses. So let's understand a little bit about specifically how would a company increase their revenue given an understanding of elasticity. All right, so I already went ahead and drew this on the board. You can see our little demand curve here. We have prices of 18 or 19 all the way down, and then we have a quantity that are 17 and etc. So for this first example, let's start with a price of 1, so P1 of 19. So at a price of 19, there's only one quantity being sold of this item, and then if the price is lowered to 18, then 2 units are sold. Now, given the last video, we know that this area of a demand curve tends to be elastic. So what is it, how, given an elastic price elasticity of demand that operates in an elastic range, how would a firm use that knowledge and increase their revenue? Well, as it turns out, revenue, the wildly complex equation for revenue is simply price times quantity. So, in fact, the revenue, price times, quantity, so the revenue, 19 times 1, so our total revenue when the price is 19 is what? 19 times 1 is 19. When we lower the price to 18, the quantity goes up, and 18 times 2 is 36. So here's what we know about an elastic range. We know that, actually I'm gonna get rid of this right here. We know that in order to make total revenue increase, what do we have to do? We have to lower the price, which is what that's telling us right here. Right? Now let's see if it works the opposite way. We know that this end of the this range of a demand curve is inelastic, and again, let's start with our price of 3. So at a price of 3, quantity 16. Well, 3 times 16 is 48. And this time, when we have a price decrease, so the price decreases from 3 to 2, our quantity 17. That's 2 times 17 is 34. So what happened to our total revenue? Ruh-roh, Scooby-Doo, it went down. So the opposite is true for an inelastic market, right? To increase your total revenue, again, Napoleon's in the way here. What you would want to do is increase your prices. And that kind of makes sense intrinsically, right? I mean, if we're talking about something, an inelastic, price elasticity of demand that's inelastic, we're talking about something like, we talked about medicine before, right? If there's medicine and you have to have that medicine, or the consumer has to have that medicine, then you can increase the price and total revenue is going to go up because they don't have any choice. They've got to buy it. Again, same thing kind of works with gasoline and other types of commodities and goods that there's few substitutes or they tend to be a necessity. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Just a couple of cats and dogs. So we've talked about the relationship between total revenue and price elasticity of demand. I'm going to erase this. And what I want to do now is just introduce 2 other types of demand. There is a price elasticity of supply. I'm not going to cover that in this video. Obviously, I've spent most of my time talking about the price elasticity of demand, so that kind of gives you a clue in terms of what's important. There are 2 other types of elasticity that I want to talk about, but these are just going to be very, very sort of high-level things to know. The first is income elasticity of demand. So income elasticity of What that is the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to a change in income. And really, we've talked about this before when we talked about normal goods and inferior goods. So here's all I really want you to know about income elasticity of demand. Unlike our prior discussion when we talked about price elasticity of demand, and I said that it was absolute value, we didn't care about the negative sign, now we care, okay? So if I won't ask you to calculate a income elasticity of demand, I'll just give you an income elasticity of demand. And if that happens to be a positive number, then what it indicates is that the good is a normal good. And if it's a negative number, it's an inferior good. And remember, the definition of a normal good is that is a good whose quantity demanded increases with an increase in income. So just about any normal consumer good, doesn't even have to be a luxury item, is a pretty good example of a normal good, right? Steak, whatever. An inferior good is defined as a good whose quantity demanded decreases given an increase in income. So the typical example of those are like ramen noodles or store brands or things like that. But when it comes to income elasticity of demand, it's just simply what's the number. If it's positive, then it's a normal good. If it's negative, then it's an inferior good, right? And then the last is cross elasticity. And then same kind of thing here, right? We talked about substitutes and complements. So substitutes and with an E, complements. And it's the same thing here. If it's a positive number, then it indicates a substitute. If it's a negative number, it indicates a complement. And remember, substitutes are goods that are used in lieu of or instead of one another. So like Coke, Pepsi, it's either one or the other. Versus complements, which are goods that are used together, like peanut butter and jelly, or tennis balls and tennis rackets or things like that. And the interesting thing about cross elasticity of demand, so if it's a positive number, it's substitutes. Negative number, it's a complement. And if it's zero, then it indicates that the two goods are not related at all. So, peanut butter and oil, motor oil, would have a cross elasticity of zero because they're neither a substitute or a complement. So that just about does it. I tried to keep my run and tally here in terms of the attributes of both elastic and inelastic, and that's going to wrap it up for this chapter. Thanks.